You know the feeling, right? You're in a big meeting, a critical decision is on the table, and somehow it just evaporates. You walk out of the room an hour later and realize nothing, literally nothing, has actually been decided. We've all seen it. There are people who don't say no, but they never really say yes either. Today we are digging into this really subtle but incredibly damaging pattern, the decision escapist. So how do we tackle this? Well, here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at what we call the vanishing decision. Then we'll dissect the anatomy of the escapist, what makes them tick. After that, we'll get into the psychology of safe, which is what drives this whole behavior. Then we'll count up the damage with the high cost of waiting. And finally, the important part, we'll lay out a path forward in forging decisive teams.
All right, let's set the scene. Imagine you're on, let's call it Project Apex. Everyone agrees it's a huge priority. There's one key decision that needs to be made to unlock everything else. The meeting is set, all the data is right there on the screen, and all eyes turn to the decision maker. And that's when it begins, the slow, subtle escape. It almost always starts with a request that sounds perfectly reasonable.
This is great stuff, really, but could we maybe get a little more data on the Q4 projections? I just want to be sure we've covered all our bases. It sounds so diligent, doesn't it? So responsible. And who's going to argue against being better informed? Nobody. So the team gets sent back to the salt mines for another week of analysis. Okay, so a week goes by. You're back in the room. The new data is presented. The decision is right there again, waiting. But now it's a different move. This is very helpful, the escapist says, but this has some pretty big implications. Let's just take a little more time to socialize this with the other department heads. Again, sounds smart. Collaboration is good, right? So the decision gets kicked down the road one more time.
So you finally get everyone back together, everybody's been socialized, the data is now overwhelming, the path forward seems totally obvious, and then comes the final genius move. I feel like we're almost there, but I'm just sensing we don't have full alignment yet. Let's work on that. And poof, just like that, the decision is gone. It wasn't a no, it wasn't a yes, it was nothing. Project Apex, dead in the water. Indefinitely. The decision wasn't rejected, it was just starved of a conclusion.
And that really gets us to the heart of it, doesn't it? Is this person just being super thorough, a careful guardian of the company's resources, or is something else at play? Are they quietly, maybe without even realizing it themselves, just ducking the weight of responsibility? To figure that out, we've got to look at the anatomy of the escapist. Okay, so let's give this a name, the decision escapist. And here's the crazy part. The escapist almost never looks weak or indecisive. In fact, their behavior is usually hidden behind this mask of really positive, super professional-sounding qualities. They are absolute masters of looking responsible while avoiding the responsibility itself. I mean, look at the mask they wear. On the surface, it's impressive. They seem thoughtful, right? Always wanting to consider every single angle. They come off as deeply analytical, constantly asking for one more piece of data, and they seem incredibly risk-aware, protecting the company from making a bad move. But let's talk about the reality behind that mask. Every one of those requests for more data kills momentum. Every delay makes it less and less clear who actually owns the outcome. And the end result? Critical decisions get pushed off not for weeks, but for months, or maybe forever. This is the classic, the signature move. Let's evaluate this further. It sounds so smart. I mean, who in their right mind would argue for less evaluation? It's a verbal judo move that just shoves the decision further down the calendar and buys them more time away from having to make a call. Now this one is really sneaky. We need more clarity. It seems like a reasonable request for better information, but let's translate what that really means most of the time. It means we need 100% certainty before we do anything. It's a demand for a world without any risk, a world that, doesn't exist, especially not in business. It creates an impossible bar to clear, which guarantees a decision can never actually be made.
And the last one, the classic, let's not rush into this. This one is brilliant because it frames doing nothing as the wise strategic choice and taking action as being reckless. But here's the thing you have to see. None of these phrases are a no. They are way more damaging than that. They're silent, subtle escapes from the weight of ownership. The decision is never killed, it just withers on the vine.
So we've seen what this looks like from the outside, but now we have to ask the bigger question. Why? Why does this happen? If you want to understand the decision escapist, you have to get inside their head and understand the powerful internal logic that makes dodging a decision feel like the safest, smartest thing to do. So let's trace the logic. From their point of view, it actually feels pretty rational. It goes something like this. Step 1.
making a decision, a real one, creates risk. It might be the wrong call. Step 2. If I'm the one who makes that call, then that risk makes me accountable. I own the outcome, good or bad. Step 3. Accountability is scary because it could lead to failure, and failure has real consequences. So they arrive at this final, really flawed conclusion. The only way to 100% guarantee I don't fail is to not make the decision in the first place. No decision feels like no risk. It's their ultimate safe space.
And what's fueling this messed up logic? Well, it's some of our most basic human fears, right? The fear of failure, the fear of being judged by your coworkers or your boss, just a plain old lack of confidence to make the right call. It all comes down to this really powerful, almost primal urge to just stay safe, to stay out of the spotlight that comes with taking a stand. And this is what makes this whole pattern so incredibly dangerous. From the outside, all of this questioning, this analysis paralysis, it can easily be mistaken for something positive. It can look like intellectual rigor, like a really high intelligence at work. But it's not. It is a very sophisticated kind of avoidance. And when an organization's culture starts mistaking avoidance for intelligence, you are heading down a very dangerous road. You start to reward the appearance of being diligent over the actual courage it takes to make a decision. And that has massive, massive ripple effects. You see, that vanishing decision on Project Apex wasn't just a single event. It was like a rock thrown into a pond. The impact just radiates outward, messing with teams, with individuals, and with the entire organization's ability to get things done. The cost of waiting is so much higher than most of us realize. Let's just break down the damage. For the team, these constant delays create confusion, frustration builds, and execution just grinds to a halt. For your best people, your strong performers, it's like hitting a brick wall. They feel blocked, their initiative just evaporates, and they learn a terrible lesson, that taking ownership here is a waste of time. And for the organization as a whole, while you're busy evaluating further, your competitor just made a move. Opportunities are lost, your speed becomes a weakness, the whole company starts shifting from being proactive and decisive to being reactive and always one step behind. So we've laid out the problem, the psychology behind it, and the damage it causes. But look, this isn't a life sentence. An organization can absolutely make a conscious choice to shift from a culture of avoidance to a culture of action. But it takes work on 3 different levels: the individual, the leader, and the team as a whole. Okay, for you as an individual, the change really starts with your mindset. First, you got to get comfortable making decisions with the information you have, not waiting for the perfect information you wish you had. Second, you have to accept imperfection. The goal is progress, not perfection. And finally, you have to proactively take ownership. When it's your call to make it. Use clear, direct language, like "my decision is to do X," to show everyone you're committed. Now, for all the leaders out there, your role here is absolutely critical, because you get the behavior you reward. If you only praise deep analysis but never the decision that comes after it, you are literally breeding decision escapists. You have to start publicly celebrating decisive action. That means creating psychological safety, making it okay for someone to make a well-intentioned decision that doesn't pan out. Treat it like a lesson learned, not a crime to be punished. And leaders, you have to be relentless about clarity. In every meeting, the question, "So who actually owns this decision?" should be normal and welcome. And finally, at the team level, you can install some really simple processes to fight off that ambiguity. First, for any big project, define the single decision owner right from the start. Not a committee, a person. Second, you have to remember that a decision without a deadline is just a nice chat. You have to set clear decide-by dates. It forces an end to the endless talk and starts building a rhythm of real momentum. We want to leave you with this final thought. It's a total illusion to think that by not deciding, we're somehow avoiding risk. Choosing not to act is an action. Indecision is a decision by default. It's the decision to let things just happen to you, or worse, to let your competitors decide your future for you. And in the world we live in today, that is almost always the most expensive decision you can possibly make.